All right, we're going to look at how to create a podcast for beginners, parentheses 2022. And this is from Think Media, who is a giant YouTube kind of education website. So I wanted to see what they had to say about creating a podcast, and let's dive right in.
Start or create a new podcast this year, then you found the perfect video, because whether you're looking to start a podcast all by yourself and you just want to go solo, or maybe you're looking into doing an interview style format for your podcast, in this video, you'll learn 5 of my easiest tips for getting started for beginners when it comes to starting a podcast, with step number 1 being deciding what mic or audio source you will be using. Now, I love the Samson Q2U. This is a dynamic microphone, meaning it's going to give you that rich.
Cool. Awesome choice right off the bat. They don't cost a ton and they work great. And I think I have one laying behind me right here. So good start.
Radio sounding podcast sound. And you probably are like, whoa, that sounds really cool, Omar. Your voice sounds like you're on a radio show or something. That's what I'm saying. You want a dynamic mic. And what's cool about this mic is it's literally just $60 and it comes with everything you need. Whether you're going to actually capture on a computer or your smartphone, you can plug it straight into it because of the USB, or you can even plug it into a mixer board or a audio recorder if you want to use the XLR, which is really nice. And then it also has a headphone out, so you could plug in some headphones and monitor your audio, which is really nice. But the key is to potentially get a dynamic microphone. But having this type of audio dynamic, using a dynamic mic, really will make your listeners more attentive to what it is you're saying, because so much outside noise is being cut out by this type of style of mic. It is important to note that this type of mic needs to be in the shot, unlike this one that I'm using for this video, where it's actually boomed out of the shot, so it's just capturing my audio from around it. That's a condenser mic. But I believe if you're going to start a podcast, think about your audio source and potentially going with a dynamic mic. And we'll post our best links down in the description below, so be sure to check those out.
You gotta just press record.
Yeah, what's really nice about the Samson Q2U and also the ATR 2100X, I think is the newest one, is that they're both USB and XLR. So you can plug them right into the computer and start recording. Or if you need to connect more than one person, or maybe you just want to upgrade down the line, you can get a mixer or a Rodecaster Pro that I'm using, something like that, and add that in down the line. You don't have to spend a bunch up front, and the flexibility with those microphones are really nice.
Hey, what's up? It's Omar Altakori with Think Media, and this channel is all about helping you grow your audience online. And so whether that's through online video and YouTube and even podcasting, we share the best tips and tools on how to accomplish that. So sometimes we'll do camera reviews, sometimes we'll do tutorials, as well as share strategies on how to grow your audience online. So be sure to subscribe if that's something you're interested in.
I agree. Think Media is an awesome resource, and they have grown tons. It used to be just, I think, just the main guy, and now they have a whole bunch of people teaching stuff. And just, yeah, go ahead and check out their channel and subscribe for sure.
But with that being said, the second step is to choose something to record your audio. Now, when it comes to recording audio for your podcast, you can go 2 different ways. You can go hardware or you can go software. Now, if you go hardware, that would be something like a Zoom recorder, where you would plug in your mic into a external device, and then you would record your audio on that and then transfer it into a software. Now, what's so cool about podcasting, because it is just capturing audio, is that you could totally capture your audio using software. And that leads me to talk about the sponsor of this video, which is Podcastle. Now, there are a ton of different options that you can.
So I've been teaching podcasting for a long time, and I have never heard of Podcastle, but let's see what they have to offer.
Use to capture your audio. However, Podcastle is awesome because it's an all-in-one solution to create professional podcasts. Podcastle has so many great features that you can use as a podcaster, and some to mention are definitely text-to-speech, where you can have AI read a script or something online for you. And that's really cool, because if you are doing a solo podcast, you can literally have a different voice join you, whether that's reading your intro or an ad script or something.
So right off the bat, it kind of reminds me of software called Descript, which has been really popular in the podcasting and video space. And they have it's like a Google Docs style editor for audio, And I've used it to create transcripts too on the fly, and it's pretty cool. But this looks nice, at least at first glance.
Something like that. Another cool feature is magic dust, and with a click of a button you can clean up your audio and remove any unwanted background noise, which is super cool, and I know a lot of people can use that feature. But I would say probably the coolest thing about Podcastle is the ability to interview up to 9 people. All you have to do to invite people onto your show is send them a link, and then you can have a conversation and capture it using Podcastle. And what I love about the fact that it's web-based is that you're not gonna lose your files anywhere. You know, your files can't get corrupted, your guests don't have to send over files, and it's gonna record a high quality file of your guests, which is super nice.
So that's interesting that they've kind of combined some of the popular software. So remote recording is been around for a long time, specifically for podcasting, and there are some big companies, Squadcast, Riverside, Iris is another one that I've helped promote, and they have been awesome. And you can record what I think, depending on the software, 9 people, something like that. And it seems like this does that too, plus has an editor. So I'd be interested to check this out.
Use alternative solutions. Oftentimes you're compromised and limited by what software you're using, i.e., let's say Zoom. If you conduct a Zoom call interview,
don't use Zoom to record podcasts unless you're on a strict budget and for some reason you already have access to it. I agree, don't use Zoom.
Audio quality can get really trashed really quick. And so Podcastle is really cool for so many different use cases. And I would definitely think it's something you can look into if you're looking to start a podcast. And we'll post a special link down in the description below for you to check them out. Now, regardless of what software or solution you use to capture your podcast, they essentially all look the same. And that's why everything I'm teaching in this video will apply to whatever software you're using, because most softwares use a track system. And so, you know, depending on how many audio files, you can see the layers of audio that you have based on the amount of files you have, whether that be some music or maybe it is a guest or what have you. You'll have a track for each source of audio. But before you even get to recording audio, you wanna make sure that you select the mic you're gonna use. And so wherever you can select your audio settings and the input option, just make sure that you select the mic that you wanna use to capture your podcast audio. Step number 3 is to now record your podcast. You know, we actually have a podcast here at Think Media called the Think Media Podcast. And if you ever wanna go deeper in how you can grow and scale a YouTube channel as a business, then be sure to subscribe to that podcast wherever you listen, or even on YouTube, you can also subscribe to it. And I'll post links to it down in the description below. All that to say, we always come ready with outlines. And I think if you're doing a podcast, to have an outline of sort is definitely helpful because it'll steer your podcast into a beginning, middle, and end. I think oftentimes
this is a good tip. I just would definitely stay away from scripting everything, but if there's certain topics that you want to cover, or maybe if you want to write out just your intro or a little bit about your guest so that you have that kind of ready to go, and you don't want to necessarily do that from memory. So having a few notes is good, but just don't overdo it because it can definitely turn into a very robotic sounding show.
I've been invited to do podcasts and they've just been this like open-ended, like no real time limit, no real direction on what value is being communicated. And so don't waste your invited guests' time by, you know, questions that,
or your listeners' time. This is another good point. People will kind of ramble on about random stuff, especially right up front, and you'll quickly lose listeners, and they're most likely not going to come back. So you want to get right to the point. Similar YouTube and podcasting, you want to kind of just focus on the important stuff. I mean, different shows have different styles, but try to cut out the fluff if you can. Good advice there.
That don't necessarily add value to your audience or the people you're trying to reach. Now, I say all that just so that you are prepared to conduct your podcast, but I do want to encourage you with the reality that your podcast does not have to be perfect. There's actually beauty in an imperfect podcast. I think the reason why podcasts resonate with audiences so well is because you get the, you know, like the raw and the real and kind of just like the unedited version, long form of somebody's style of content. Now, even if or when there is a mistake, you can totally edit it out later. And that brings me to step number 4, which is to actually edit your podcast. So I would say the first thing you want to do is level the volume based off of who is on the podcast. So, maybe you talk at a higher energy and it's a little bit louder. I think it's really important to have a good audio experience for your viewers to make sure those volumes are very similar. You want to
Yeah, this is pretty crucial. If you've ever been listening to a show and the host or the guest is a lot quieter, and then you have to turn the volume up, but then the other person is really loud, and then it's too loud, and you have to go turn the volume down. It can be really annoying to listen to. So it is definitely important to make sure that all the audio levels are as close as possible between people, and even for music tracks, making sure those aren't super loud, or if you have it kind of bedded underneath someone talking, you want it to be pretty quiet so that it doesn't overpower what they're saying. So this is an important tip, and you just might not think about it until you're listening to someone who didn't do it, and it's really annoying.
I'm at the same level when it comes to listening. You don't want somebody to have to turn up and down the car audio volume or even on their headphones or what have you. So do what you can to levelate the audio. And because I'm using Podcastle, I'm just gonna click on Magic Dust so that I can clean up the audio a bit. If you're using another software or recorder or editing system, some effects that might be helpful to you are things like noise reduction or de-reverb, which will eliminate some echo if if somebody's echoey or what have you. And then there's what is called an equalizer. If you want to equalize your audio, whether that's bringing in the low end or if you want to, bring up the highs and things like that. There's a lot of things that you can do.
Yeah, it's good advice, but I would definitely stay away from messing with too much as a beginner. Yeah, you want to keep things simple. So EQ, I'd probably stay away from. If you have a good, decent microphone, it should be fine. Some of those software-based kind of reverb control, they're hit or miss. So I would do what you can to make your room acoustically beneficial, I guess. So making sure you have some sound absorption stuff, just things in the room, whatever it is, to make sure that the audio isn't bouncing off the walls.
When editing audio, but those are I would say 3 main edits that you would want to look into making if you're using another software. The next edit you can make is trim any fluff you may have. Like I mentioned earlier, if you maybe made a mistake, you can simply cut and splice and then ripple delete over that audio so it's like it never happened. Or if there's just dead space. And so just making basic cuts and slices and then eliminating any of that dead space will give your podcast a better.
Notice he said ripple delete, which means that it's supposed to slide the right track over to the left, but in this case, it didn't look like the software is able to do that, or maybe it's a different feature or something. So just a little point there. If you're able to ripple delete, you should be able to just delete, and it slides it over, and it's kind of all one step, and it actually saves a ton of time. So that would be a nice feature if they don't have it.
Better tempo. The next edit is optional, but I would encourage you to add some fade in music in the beginning and then fade out music at the end. And I love that Podcastle actually has audio tracks that are royalty free that you can plug right into your podcast and fade it out. And just a scenario I think is really cool that could be created with Podcastle is legit having a text to speech intro where you have somebody from another country with a dope accent read off your intro and then put some vibey music, and then you can come in after the intro and say, welcome to the show. I'm so pumped to have my boy Sean Cannell with me, CEO of Think Media, yada yada yada, conduct an interview. But you can totally have fun with it. Now if you've gotten any value in this video,
that's a good point. This used to be really popular, have a kind of an intro bumper, and it introduces the show, maybe a little bit about you or about the show or something, with music kind of embedded into it. And there are some companies that will create those for you. Obviously you have to pay for them, but something you can look into. I'll put a link to one in the description that I have recommended in the past, but you definitely don't have to do that, especially as a beginner. You can go ahead and just say your intro, find some royalty-free music. So use Podcastle, like they said, or there's a ton of websites, but just make sure you don't use royalty, like commercial music, because they can get you in a lot of trouble. So stick with the royalty-free stuff.
video, let me know by hitting that like button for me. And question for you, let me know down in the comments below what your podcast or what you're thinking about your podcast being about. Would love to know all the different topics. And I would want to encourage you that podcasting is alive and well. There's actually way less podcast creators than any other kind of creator. And so I want to encourage you to really go after it and start that podcast and just get started, you know?
That's a good point. So I think there's a couple million podcasts right now, and for the longest time, it was under a million. And I'm sure YouTube channels, I don't have the number on hand, but I'm sure there's tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of channels. And there's a lot less competition in the podcasting space. So it's always a good time to jump in. And it's just going to keep growing, but it's still tiny compared to some of these other channels.
Even if nobody listens to it, let people not listen to your first few episodes so you can get those kinks out of the way. And so that when people really start coming in, listening to your podcast, that you can actually, deliver great, valuable content. But with that being said, the fifth step after you've edited your podcast, you can now export it and share it with the world. And if you want to learn how to syndicate your podcast, meaning getting your podcast on Apple and Spotify and everywhere that people stream podcasts, be sure you click or tap the screen to check out this video, and you'll learn how to do that. And so you can easily get your podcast out there. And I hope the best for you as you start your podcast this year and that you're going to crush it.
All right. So it looks like that's about it for this video. It says how to create a podcast for beginners. And I feel like we got a little bait and switch there. We have to go watch another video, which is a tactic for them to keep you on YouTube and keep you on their channel, which then makes it so it looks like you're really interested. So I think that was good info, but it seemed like it was really more of a, sponsorship for the podcast. It looks like great software, so nothing wrong with that, but kind of want to know how to get it out there. So maybe we'll watch this next video and take a look at what they have to say on where to put your podcast.